Yo, what up? Welcome to another video. Today we're gonna do a quick deck profile of the project, a custom format you can all join by scanning either the QR code, looking in the description below. It's great, but more about it later. Today we're showing the deck profile of Raudmagi, won the first test tournament of the newly launched format that we're having right now after a big set. Yeah, how are you feeling, Rod?
I feel good. This was fun. The event went according to plan. I didn't expect to get this far, but here we are. So, I was playing Infernity, or rank 3 Infernity. And the deck basically aims to establish Conjurer, because it has a really strong effect by just making everything lose 800 attack. And then just keeping threats off the board with like Fissures, Infernity Break, like Bottomlesses, Sakus, and such. And then, and then you use Conjurer in combination with Necromancer and Beast to make all your rank 3 plays. So yeah, that's basically like the philosophy behind the deck.
Alright. That's the philosophy. How did it work out through the tournament? Were you satisfied with the build? Was it doing what you hoped it did?
Yeah, the build, it worked pretty fine. Like the worst card in the deck is Cybernetic Cyclopean. But that's just because there isn't really a great substitute. You could play like Wind Up Rabbit or something that I was toying around with. But in a lot of cases I found that Cyclopean was a bit better than Rabbit, even though it doesn't have the level 3 synergy with that Rabbit does. It allows you just to have another bigger beater, which in combination with Conjurer makes it beat over like anything below 3000, which is really big.
And that explains one of the card choices I was already wondering about. Because this looks based, of course. Like this looks spicy, but yeah, it's a good question why you would play that, of course, over other things in a somewhat serious tournament. But that seems like a good explanation for it. Have you thought about maybe instead playing a third Infernity Beast, or was that just never an option either?
Infernity Beast is not that great, to be honest. It's there. It is a good beater, but it on its own doesn't do jack shit. So like I only ever want to see it in combination with Conjurer or Necromancer. So that's why I'm not playing 3 of them, because then I would see them more, which sounds weird, but yeah.
Yeah, you want to have them basically for the toolbox then, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
Alright. No,
There's also some like awkward synergy with Beast and Virtual World Shell Jaja, because it's not a Fiend type. So you can't establish 2 monsters with the same original type in the grave to banish like a Recruiter or a problematic monster. So that's also one reason why my Beast is kind of suboptimal, but it's the best we got.
Okay.
Best.
And Infernity Mirage, for example, as well?
Yeah, Mirage is a card. It's pretty good, but that's again like the same thing. You just want to establish your resource loop with Conjurer, maybe Sabers, and Necromancer.
And they don't really do that.
Mirage would do that, but it would have to be drawn at that precise moment to be useful. So
Yeah.
when you have like two targets in grave to summon, so that's why I'm not on that.
Okay. No, okay, cool. Then for one of the next questions that I can tell, like, okay, Fissure is definitely explained. Some of the other things as well. But then, if I look at your list and I compare it to, for example, Siro's Gusto list, I see that there was a difference in staples you were going for. For example, you still chose to play one Blackhorn of Heaven in the main. That was one of the smaller differences. But one of the bigger differences is that you played 3 Wiretap, which Siro and most other players in the tournament played 0 of. So, what are Blackhorn and Horn of Heaven, Wiretap? Which one would you like to explain first?
So Blackhorn is just really great. It only loses to like precisely Wiretap, because you can't, unless you like preemptively MST it, but like you can't Stardust it, you can't negate it except with like a Judgment otherwise. And it also fits the philosophy of keeping things off the board, because if you have Conjurer up, there's not a lot of normal summons that threaten it on its own, so then they're forced to make an extra deck play, and Blackhorn just deals with that. Wiretap. This used to be 7 tools before Wiretap came out. So I exchanged it because a lot of decks are slower and they play traps. And especially now with Powerful Reapers at 3, the ability to just shuffle it back and negate it is really strong. Because I've seen a lot of decks now are like kind of reliant upon Powerful Rebirth. And Wiretap along with MST, they deal with Rebirth really well.
So
and Rebirth is another like interesting exclusion from the deck.
Yeah.
As you can tell, like I'm not playing any Rebirth. And that is because Rebirth messes up your levels. And that's really important. Because you don't really want to Rebirth anything if you're not going to make an Exceed play. So Rebirthing, like, it could push for damage, I suppose, but that's not very optimal. Because you have so much Graveyard Recursion to begin with. So Rebirth doesn't really add much on its own.
Alright. No, because I was thinking about like how you're only on 10 monsters, of course, which is not that weird for a control deck like this, I would say. But I would assume that with just 10 monsters and stuff like a cybernetic Cyclopean or Cyclope or something, Cyclopean, cybernetic Cyclopean, you could reborn it with a powerful Rebirth and that would be a good play, or something like a Necromancer getting put back to get back on the field again. But then when you say when it messes with levels a lot and that you already have so much recursion, which I guess is true with Achium Sabers and 3 Conjurer and 3 Necromancer already taking a lot of the cards back. I guess it really is only Cybernetic Cyclopean that doesn't already get brought back by this deck.
Yeah. And then you also have a 3 Fiend Griefing, of course, to like shuffle back whatever your opponent has engraved to send either Conjure or Sabers or whatever you're missing. So that acts as the 13th monster.
I think that's as far as for the main deck. Like Bottomless is semi-limited, so there's no question about that either. And since it was the first tournament, how did you feel with some of the new staples being here, like Mirror Force and Bottomless, for example?
Mirror Force was scary. Every time I didn't have Wiretap stat, I was kind of afraid. Or like Beast that's where Beast comes in very handy, because your opponent can't activate spells or traps if it attacks. So a lot of the times, attacking to multiple back row when I didn't have like insurance set, like a Wiretap or Solemn or whatever, if I had multiple monsters, I would just attack with Beast. Because taking the risk into running into Mirror Force was too great a lot of the time. So Mirror Force absolutely like warps the technical play that I wasn't playing.
And what about Bottomless? Did it change? Like, you could say Mirror Force is a stronger Saku, but it definitely did warp. But then with Bottomless versus, for example, before we had Trap Hole or stuff like that, how did that change anything? Especially maybe the banishing part, or was it just the same as a Trap Hole?
I used to play in a previous build. I used to play Trap Holes when Bottomless wasn't out yet. So in a way, it serves a very similar purpose. It is better because the summons you want to stop are the ones that can break your Conjurer or something of the sort. And this also hits extra summons. So that's why it's better than regular Trap Hole. And another pro about this deck is there isn't a lot of things that run into Bottomless here. They can't Bottomless your Conjurer, they can't Bottomless your Necromancer, they can't Bottomless your Jaja. So yeah, if you know your opponent has Bottomless, it is very possible to play around it.
Did you personally ever face the issue where your opponent's monsters were too weak to Bottomless because of Conjure?
Yep, that came up for sure. But yeah, that is a bit of a contradiction, I guess. But it's not that big of a deal, let's say.
Okay. Cool. Then that's it for the main deck. Is there anything you still want to explain maybe about the main deck?
Not really. I think this is all pretty self-explanatory.
Alright.
From what I've said.
Then for the side deck, I think most of it is also kind of self-explanatory. The only thing I want to ask real quick is your Amazonas package. You went for 1 trainee and 2 search spells instead of the other way around. What's up with that?
Okay, so trainee is of course really good. It's limited. The thinking was playing the search spells. That means that it is a monster when you need it to be, and it's a spell you can set to keep your hand at 0 when it's not. So that's the purpose with that. And I would just side out like Cyclopean and like 2 other cards that were subpar in the matchup, depending on what I was playing against.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the thought with the training package.
Okay.
And Dust Tornado, that sometimes it's just better than Wiretap in preemptively hitting things. So yeah, that's what's that for. That's mainly for swapping out with Wiretap. Debunk is also for floater decks, such as Gusto. And it's really hard for them to play through in a lot of cases. Breakthrough skill was here for just random bullshit that I wasn't expecting maybe. Because stopping effects is kind of underrated in this format, as it is right now. So breakthrough skill fills that role really nicely. And Void Trap Hole is for decks that rely on the rest of the deck a lot. And especially like fusion decks, such as the new Predaplants or whatnot.
Yeah.
To change that with like Blackhorn and such.
Mm-hmm. We didn't really see it in action yet a lot in this tournament, in this first one. Are we fearing it more in next tournaments?
Yeah, this was just a testing tournament, so I wasn't expecting like the top tier decks being played for, yeah. So I didn't expect it to, but I of course wanted to keep it in there in case I ran into some.
Okay. And then for your extra deck, like, it seems like a pretty standard, very good rank 3 toolbox. Is there anything you want to specify or explain? Like, for example, I don't know, like just anything really.
Musa Rhythm came up surprisingly often. Like, just being able to pump out 2800 damage on like an empty board. That was... I didn't expect it to be like that prevalent, but it really did come up a fair few times.
Yeah.
Leviar is a new addition to the format, and holy shit is that card good. Because your Conjure banishes itself if it leaves the field, if it is summoned by its own effect. So then you can just Leviar bring it back. Or like your opponent's monster to make like another rank 3. Or even rank 4 if you have like Cyclopean up. So yeah, Leviar is a real star.
Okay. Would you, it's okay, that seems great. I also saw Granosaurus, did that ever come up? And why is it there? Because it's so alone, I usually don't even see it anymore in rank 3 decks. So, why did you still opt to run it?
It can be good at beating over defensive monsters and applying pressure if you're out of Jajas, or if Jaja isn't live. That's when Granosaurus is made, pretty much. So like in Gustos, maybe if I have a debunk set or something, I can go into Granosaurus, hit it, get the little burn in, and then the debunk their float. Which I don't think came up, but like it's there for that theoretical situation.
Yeah, I guess it's the 15th spot in the extra deck. Like, after
Yeah,
a while,
like it's
it
not
becomes
super tight, the space in the extra deck, so I can afford running Granosaurus.
Yeah. Talking about space and stuff, is there anything you would change in the future, like to this build right now, or things that you're doubting about the Infernity deck at least?
I don't think that it is strong enough to keep up with the current meta decks. I think that it is too small, and like yeah, in size wise, and that a lot of decks can't just run it over, because you have to open like a lot of interruptions and then keep drawing into new ones every turn to maintain advantage. Because the rank 3 play is not that unique. It's just you're playing really an advantage engine on top of your interruptions, which is good, sure, but it's not tier 1 in my opinion. Yeah, this deck is not tier 1.
All right. Well, congrats anyway then for doing so great with this deck, despite it
Thank
not
you.
being tier 1. And your tournament matchups were anything you want to say about that? A match that was really good, a moment that was funny. Any tournament highlights, basically.
Yeah, I was really lucky with matchups. I played against Gusto twice. And this deck kind of shits on Gusto, because you're playing, a lot of the Gustos, all of them except Guldo, require them to be destroyed by battle to trigger. And playing 3 Fissure, 3 Infernity Break, that kind of makes that difficult for them. Because you just attack into one of them, and they float into something, and then you fissure it in main phase 2. Or like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And post-side, of course, you just put in your debunks and your trainee package, and then you can like start attacking into them preemptively.
Yeah.
However, in the finals against Siro, in game 1, I did just decide to start ramming his gustos. Just attacking into them blindly. But I was careful not to allow him to end on calm so he could recycle and draw. So like he didn't really have any play except just waiting to draw and hoping to draw into something good, which he didn't, and allowed me to win that game 1. So yeah. The other matchup I had in semifinals was against Gemini. And if I recall correctly, he didn't draw that well, which is kind of yikes. So yeah, I took that match pretty convincingly, if I recall correctly.
Okay. Thank you very much then for this deck profile, man. Like, how are you enjoying the format so far? That's the last question.
It's fun. It's good. There's a lot of like unexplored territory with this big new set. So there is definitely room for evolution of what is considered good or not. So yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Any shoutouts before we close?
Shout out to Dan for creating an awesome format, and shout out to the community for being just really amazing.
Welcome, man. Naming and thank you for being part of the community. I just love hosting these tournaments. I love seeing the decks being built. I love seeing you guys play, and it's just amazing. So thank you very much for joining us. Well, congratulations once again for at least getting this one, and let's hope you keep doing well in the next bigger tournaments as well. All right.
Thanks, man.
This was Card Game Philosopher. Out.